Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our second Candid Conversations with a Housewife, and I am Miss Ginny. I am so glad that you guys joined me again this week. I'm looking forward to some really good conversations and hearing what you guys have to say about the topic. And so let's just jump right into it. And so today's topic is the true cost. What is your marriage actually worth? And the reason that I thought about this is because, when it comes to our marriages, before we even get to marriage, I was listening to a sermon about daycare and about our children. And the pastor, he said something that I thought was profound. And he said, would you leave a suitcase full of money in a room full of strangers? And of course, I'm thinking to myself, no, I wouldn't do that because they could be anybody. They could be thieves and liars. And then he said, so why would you leave your child in a room full of strangers, in reference to daycare? And I don't have any children, but I was just listening to it because I thought it was interesting and I like this pastor. And so I would thought, wow, that's a really good point. So many people just drop their kids off. They do, I guess, like a preliminary walk around the place and talk to people, but they don't know those people. They might know the leader, they might know the boss, they might meet a couple of the people, but they don't know those people that they're dropping their child off with. And so we're not talking about daycare today. We're talking about marriage. But I thought about that. And I thought, so many people are just so flippant about their marriage when, I believe, based on what the Bible teaches about marriage, I believe that your marriage even comes before your children, because your union with your spouse is more important, because your union with your spouse, helps to create the best kind of children that you can have, and to create the best kind of family that you can have. And so, it's so common now, but let it not be said of God's people that we would just leave our children off with strangers and that, and not realize their value as individuals and as young, impressionable minds and souls. But even more important, let it not be said of God's people that we would be so flippant about our not eternal, we're not Mormons, but our sacred covenant, lifelong covenant of marriage, that we would, not appreciate it and not treat it with the seriousness and, the reverence and the value that it deserves. And so jumping right in, I'm going to list some things that people put in front of their marriage, like things that people will cash out, I guess you could say, their marriage for, instead of putting in the investing in their marriage, if you will, what they should, instead of that. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is money. There are a lot of people who put money in front of their marriage. They feel like that bonus or that extra check or, those extra hours, that adds up. And that, really puts a strain on a lot of marriages. And I don't think that this is by any means a new phenomenon. I'm not saying that, because there are a lot of reasons that, marriages break down that are kind of new, or at least the way that they manifest is new. Lust is not new, but, lust being a lot more accessible to people due to social media, that is new. And so, things like that, those are reasons why marriages break down. But money and greed, that is just as old as time itself. And so many people, and I guess like a new part of that phenomenon is how women are getting into it, and how a lot of women are cashing in their marriages for those careers and for those, um, career goals and aspirations. And like just the other day, I was watching a video, and this TikToker, singer, entertainer named Bella Porch was lamenting about how she forfeited her marriage to be famous. And she said that she had met this guy when they were in the military, and that they were in love, and it was like love at first sight. And I think she said they were together for 2 years. I think she said they were together for 7 and married for 2, or together for 2 and married for 7. The details I'm fuzzy on. But the primary thing is that they got a divorce because he was not interested in that fast-paced lifestyle of, being on the arm of a superstar or being on the arm of a celebrity. And she wanted that lifestyle. And so she put her marriage above that. And now, I guess it's been maybe a year or two, or maybe even longer, that, this has transpired. And she's sad about it. And she was crying about it, like, oh, I wish I could go back and change it and fix it. And it's like, hopefully that they can reconcile. Hopefully he hasn't gotten remarried, and maybe his heart is softened to it. But we don't want to have to quit on our marriages and have an epiphany, and then later on want to come back and salvage the scraps and the remains of it, just for money. It's not worth it. Your marriage is worth more than a paycheck. But so many women are doing this now, where you have these career women where they're all about chasing a bag and securing a bag, and they're all about, chasing a check. And they're like, yeah, and I find it so funny because it's so counterintuitive with these women, because they're like, oh, I need to get a career. I need to get a job. I need to, maintain my transferable skills, or my employable skills. I need to keep those up, because one day my marriage might fail, and then my husband won't be there to support me, or I can't rely on a man, and I can't, lean on a man financially speaking, because, men cheat or men leave and all that stuff. It's so funny, ironically speaking, because when you have that attitude, when you go into it with that mentality, your marriage is going to be more likely to fail. If you're saying, I have to work these extra hours, I have to chase my career because my marriage might fail. Oh, well, what do you know? Your marriage is much more likely to fail. When I met my husband, I told him, pretty soon after we started dating that, I intend on being a housewife. I don't plan on working. I'm not going to be, some career woman. I expect you to support us financially, and what have you. And I had some people in my life, some women, of course, telling me like, oh, I don't know, how can you just, fully rely on that? How can you hang your hat on that when marriages, they're breaking up all over the place? The divorce rate is high, and he might run out on you. And my husband and I hadn't known each other that long when we got married. We had only been together for 5 months. And so, people, they were skeptical. And I guess, at the end of the day, he's still human, and, God knows what's going to happen. But I do not doubt him. I trust him. I put my faith in him. And not only do I put my faith in him, and so I'm of the mindset of like, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize this. I'm not going to do anything to intentionally set a bomb off in my marriage, because I need him. Because it's not like I couldn't work. I could. I have, I do my own little business on the side. And I talk to you guys, which I love. So it's not like I couldn't go out and make money. I choose not to, because I think that that's the proper role of a husband and wife, that the man is the provider. And so I want him to be able to fulfill his role in our marriage. And so I am coming into the marriage, and I walk every day in our marriage in a sense of, okay, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm not going to go buck wild, because I don't want him to leave me, because I don't want to have to go back into the workforce. Okay. So there's that part of our marriage, that my end, that I'm holding it together. And then on his end, he feels responsible for me, because he knows that I need him, and he also loves the fact that he feels needed. A lot of these marriages where these women are like, I can do that all by myself. I don't need you. I got my own job. I got my own car. I had my own house before I met you. What do I need you for? Don't ask me what I bring to the table because I got the table. you know, a man doesn't feel needed in those scenarios. And so, he's probably not the one leaving. More often than not, it's the woman who's leaving. But he's not worried about you. He's not thinking to himself like, oh man, I gotta work more hours. I gotta hustle. I gotta be the best husband I can be because I need to provide for my wife. No. He's like, well, she was doing it without me, and she'll do it that she was doing it before me, and she'll do it after me. She leaves, so it's a completely different perspective. It's a completely different world view in your marriage where you are leaning on each other in that way, and that you're not putting money before your union. And so, people, they have this idea of, oh, I need to level up and I need
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry about what's going on right now. I think she have some connection issue. So hopefully we can bring her back to the show as soon as possible. Um, I'm not sure it is just signature on her end. I think she's coming back right now. Make sure I can bring her back up. Wait for it to load. Sorry about you guys. Are you okay right now?
Okay, I can hear you now, David.
Yeah, there's something glitchy
I
going on
don't
with
know
you
what
on the
happened.
screen.
It just no, it was weird.
I know it kicked you off. You sure you have full signal on your end?
You said when something glitches,
Full
what?
internet. You have full internet signal on your end.
What you say?
Do you have full internet signal on your end? I want to make sure before I step down. Go ahead. I don't want
Yeah,
you
it
to
says my
keep
connection
talking
is
again.
strong.
Okay, no problem. So let's
Yeah,
keep the show going. Sorry about you guys for technical difficulty.
it says it's strong.
And I mean, something
Yeah,
going with
hold on just a
StreamYard itself.
second. Um, okay,
Ladies and gentlemen,
I
sorry
think we
about the
should be
technical
good.
difficulty.
Close
I'm
all
doing
my
my
other
best to keep the
tabs.
show up and running. All right.
Okay.
So let us get the show back and running. And thank you guys for your patience. Let me take myself down. All right.
Okay. No, we're building it as we fly. So I don't know what the last thing you guys heard me say was. But I was basically just wrapping up my point about money and how money has its place. It's good. We need to not care about money, but our marriage is more important. And so I also wanted to give a shout out to some people that are in the chat. Um, so I was saying that Dr. Nakumbe, he said shout out to Miss Jenny, Night-ish. He says hello, Da Say DS. She says good evening to everyone in the chat. Clement Gray, he says, what's up, Black Men Unfiltered? Keep up the content, sir. Yes, we love this network. We love where we can, speak freely and, not be pigeonholed by censorship. What We Know podcast. She says, Miss Jenny, greetings to you. And so, yeah. So going into my next point is the idea of freedom. A lot of people, they'll cash in their marriages. They don't feel like their marriage is worth their freedom. And once again, I feel like this is something that is affecting a lot of women. I feel like very often I see on TikTok where women are saying like, oh, I had to leave my husband because I lost myself, or because I found that, I was losing myself in my kids and in my husband, and they were taking over my life, and I wasn't doing any of the things that I used to do, and I wasn't me anymore. And, I felt trapped and I couldn't do with stuff I used to do. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the whole idea, is that when you get married, you're not going to live the exact same kind of life that you did when you were single. And when you have children, you're not going to live the same kind of life that you did when you were childless. Like, people don't understand the concept of trade-offs in life. If you're going to have something, you have to accept the fact that you are no longer going to have something else. And so, to have a marriage and to have a successful marriage, at the very least, is that, you're not going to be able to do all of the, maybe spontaneous things that you used to do. And I'm not saying this as someone who lived a boring life beforehand, and now I'm the kind of person where I was going out all the time, and I had a full-time job, so I had a lot more disposable income, and so things were exciting. But when it comes to what I want out of life, what I deem valuable, what I feel like would fulfill me in life, is that I want to be a wife. And if I'm going to be a wife, then these are the kind of things that I want. And so I had to put away that old stuff, and I had to accept that this is the way things are going to be now. And I mean, you can run your marriage and run your life how you see fit. That's your prerogative. But the evidence is clear that you can't be selfish in your marriage, and you have to sacrifice and put the things that you used to do aside. It's not going to be all about you. And so, excuse me. And so you might feel like, yeah, my life is being consumed by my family. My life is being consumed by my husband and my children. And you might be right. Your life might be being consumed by them. But that's a good thing. Because what else would your life be consumed by? Your job? The faithless corporation that you work for, who would replace you just as soon as they found you? That place? Or, by traveling, or by getting degrees at college, or really, what else is there? And I mean, there are people who dedicate their lives to ministry and dedicate their lives to serving God, but that is very few and far between. That is not the reason why most people are not getting married today. When people say, oh, I don't want to get married, I want to be tied down, that's because they want this artificial, very materialistic and juvenile sense of freedom that they know that marriage is not really going to be able to afford to them, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing that when we get married, we have a change of pace. Our lives are different because it helps us become different people, become better people. I find it so funny when I hear people say that, oh, I feel like marriage was changing me. I feel like my marriage I was losing myself. I mean, yeah, you were growing, you were developing, you were maturing. And what a shame that you cut that off at its kneecaps. and you threw in the towel so early before you even really got to see the fruit of your labor. So it's unfortunate. And another thing when it comes to freedom, aside from, people wanting this like artificial sense of, I want to go travel and I want to do me and I want to just live my life and do my own thing, is like what Ayesha Curry said on I think it was Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith, where she was like, "Oh, men don't flock to me and men don't look at me like they used to, but women are still flocking and looking at Stefan." People, they want to keep dating. They want to keep that initial excitement of when you're dating someone. They want to do that forever. And it's like, of course, your marriage of 20 years is not going to feel exactly how it does when you just meet someone and you're going on a first date and you're getting to know someone and you have those new butterflies. Like, yeah, it's going to be different, but it's going to be good because you will never be fulfilled by going on 100 first dates. People are so afraid of growth today. And I think that is something that, doesn't get talked about a lot, is that people, they're just so comfortable being mediocre and comfortable just being where they are. And they don't want to push themselves and they don't want to sacrifice and they don't want to, be, pushed out of their comfort zone. And it's a real shame because I saw this quote on Instagram that said, "The success that you're looking for is behind the work that you're avoiding." And I've been taking that to heart ever since I saw that. And I've been thinking about that a lot and meditating on it because it is so true. Like I think I said it last week, or maybe I said it in one of my videos. It's all starting to mix together now. But, we all look at these older couples who are, in their 50s or 60s or 70s, and they're holding hands and they still hang out with each other and they get along and they seem, they say that they're happy and they've been happy. And we all love to see that. And it's beautiful. And we should want to see it. And because it's a symbol of, unconditional love, like what Jesus has with us as Christians. And it's beautiful. But let me tell you something. Every one of those couples that I know, people who have, been married for a long time, I talk to them. And it's a lot of work. And they all say that, a marriage is a lot of work. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of compromise. But it is worth it. It is worth the sacrifice. And so a lot of people, they'll never get to that point. They'll never see the big picture of their marriage and how, your marriage is not just about you. Your marriage is about others. It's about society. It's about, your local community. And so when you forfeit on your marriage, you're forfeiting, you're making it seem like, that's an okay thing to do. And other people see that. Young people coming up behind you, they see that. And it's just a bad look in general for marriage. It's bad marketing for marriage when you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna just stay in the streets and I'm gonna just do my own thing and I don't want to be tied down and I'm not gonna sacrifice and I'm not gonna, compromise on anything that I want to do and who I feel like I am just for a man or just to be married. Why do I need to do that?" Complete misstep, I must say. And shout out to Andre Terry. He says, "Hi, Miss Jenny." Hello, Andre. And so another thing, and then once I finish this last point about happiness, then you can drop the link and we can see if anybody wants to come up here and add some things or you can drop the link right now and then just, I guess, keep anybody who comes in the back until I finish my point. But so my last point that I want to mention about people who are, forfeiting their marriages and think that, these are just some things that are common that I see that people will throw in or cash in their marriages for. And the last one is happiness. And how ironic is it that last night on my stream, I was talking not about marriage, but I was talking about the gospel. And some of the people that were watching, they were talking in the chat. And one of them, he was saying that, happiness should never be the goal. Happiness is a byproduct of achieving your goals. And I think that is so true. And so many people, they think that, oh, well, I want to be happy. My most important thing is that I'm happy. And if I'm not happy and if this no longer serves me, then I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna do something else. And that is just really misguided because happiness is not something, happiness is a feeling, you know? And so feelings, they fade, they ebb and flow, and they're not reliable. And so, but what is reliable what should be reliable, but it's increasingly not reliable, are your vows. You know, this is what you said. You gave this person your word, you know, that you were going to be there with them for thick and thin, and for better, for worse, for richer or poorer. And you know, if you know your spouse gets sick, or if you guys lose all your money, or you know, if anything happens, you know, who reality is stranger than fiction. So who knows what could happen in your life, and then affect your marriage. And so happiness should never be the goal, but time and time again, and this is something with men and women I've seen, that, you know, oh, I'm not happy, you know, she's annoying, she nags too much, or you know, she spends too much money. Or yeah, you know, just like, oh, she's a complainer, oh, she's always talking down to me. And I'm not saying that those things are okay. I'm not trying to justify them. But what I am saying is that your marriage is worth the struggle. And a lot of people, they complain about their marriage being boring, which I can understand. Um, it's not always going to be really exciting all the time. Like I was just saying with the last point about how you're not always going to have those butterflies, and it's not going to be all the excitement that in a relationship is at the very beginning, when you're, you know, been married for like 10, 15 years, I can only imagine. But, you know, that is not an excuse to get rid of it, or to, you know, trade it in for the newer model. You know, your marriage is more important than your temperamental or your temporary happiness. Oh, Dr. Nakumbe with the $5 super chat. Thank you, sir. Says, greetings, Miss Jenny. Thanks for having the conversation. Yes, it is my pleasure. um, yes, we appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and for donating. And so yeah, you know, people, they talk about, oh, you know, my marriage, I wasn't feeling fulfilled, I wasn't being happy, you know, it felt like a drag the whole time. And and I've heard this from, you know, older women who are supposed to be mature, you know, say like, oh, you know, my marriage, I couldn't do it anymore, or it was stale. Like, what? Your marriage has gone stale, like it's a bag of, like it's a loaf of bread or something. Like, you know, best buy date is X, Y, and Z, or it expires on this date. And it's like, this thing is supposed to be good for the rest of my life. You know, what do you mean it went stale? That just makes me laugh whenever I hear that. I just think that's so funny. You know, the terms that people use to describe their divorce, like when Tia Mowry said that she graduated from her marriage. No, I'm pretty sure you flunked out. I mean, because when your marriage fails, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Not that you graduated, because to graduate would mean that you accomplished what you set out to do, and hopefully you didn't set out to be divorced. We can only hope. But anyways, and another part of, you know, people saying that they're not happy is, you know, when they claim to have just had irreconcilable differences, which, you know, that goes hand in hand with the no fault divorce, which I'm definitely going to talk about at a later date. Because when that got introduced, marriage was pretty much brought to its knees. The institution of marriage. I mean, what are we supposed to do with no fault divorce? You know, but like I said, I'm gonna talk about that at a later time. But yeah, when it comes to irreconcilable differences, you know, that's just a cop out for people to use to say like, oh, I mean, there were no real problems. You know, she wasn't beating me, she didn't cheat on me, but I just want to leave. You know, I know I said I was going to stay with her the rest of my life. I know I promised that I was going to be with her through sickness and health. And I know I gave my word before a community of my peers and before God, but I just don't want to anymore. I don't want to do that. So now I'm quitting. And we think that this is acceptable, and we just tolerate this in our society and from people that we know. And I feel like we need to do a much better job as people who are serious about marriage, that we need to hold each other's feet to the fire. And, you know, if someone comes to us, like, I had a friend who, now, her situation would not have been just something as flippant and meaningless as irreconcilable differences. Her husband cheated on her, and she asked another friend of mine, a friend of ours, like a mutual friend, if she should, how she should handle it. She didn't want to leave, but she felt like she should. And I told her, I was like, whatever you do, it's going to be between you and God. But I don't think that you should leave. I think that you should work this out because you can, and people have, and they have seen the light at the end of the tunnel. And, that was like 2, 3 years ago now, and they're still together. Praise God. And so, you know, people who want to make their marriage work, they can, and they should, because their marriage is worth the effort. And this whole thing about, oh, I mean, I want to leave. I'm tired of it. He doesn't put the seat down enough, or he doesn't help around the house enough, or, oh, she doesn't, cook the right stuff for me. And, all this stuff. It's like, you got to get the big picture in mind, people. Like, we're talking about real life. We're talking about real world consequences. Because what have we seen in our society since, people have just been throwing out marriage, people have just been cashing in their marriage? What has it gotten us? Where has it gotten us? We have all these bastard children walking around. We have women are all over the place on antidepressants. Men are ending themselves at a record rate. Society is in shambles. And of course, it's not all because of marriage and all because of the nuclear family, but it is it would be nonsensical to say that does not have play a very large part in it. And, I mean, man, it's like, it's an attack on all sides, but we got to do better, and we got to hold people accountable, because it's just, it's not acceptable. And maybe things like this, like podcasts like this, it won't be for people, people are going to do what they want to do. And some people, they're not willing to listen because they're just hell-bent on doing what they want to do. But people who are willing to listen and who are willing to, take advice and be accountable for their actions, then, they could be reasoned with. And so, Black David, if anybody is backstage, you can bring him up. But if not, then I can just continue to talk about the different things that people will forfeit their marriage over. And, I just think it's such a shame because, marriage is the bedrock of society, and it is the foundation. And just like Black Man was talking about, I think it was not last Tuesday, but 2 Tuesdays ago. Oh, no, that was lost in translation, about whether or not marriage is the cornerstone or the capstone. It is the cornerstone. And that is the thing that you should be building your life around. And so when we're just, uprooting families and uprooting marriages, and not really thinking about the true cost of it, it's the ramifications of it are crazy. And, and we can see the damage that it's doing. And it's a shame that these families, that people aren't holding on anymore. People don't believe in sacrifice. People don't want to go out of their way to try and to struggle. I was listening to another podcast earlier today about how to live on less. And people, they don't realize that the way that we do things now is not the way that things have always been done, and that we're just so used to our modern conveniences and just everything being quick and easy and at the touch of a button, and and just rapid, and like microwave society. And as soon as your marriage is becoming too much of a burden, and oh, it's not serving me anymore, oh, I'm not having the best time ever anymore, then I'm gonna go, and I'll see you later. And our grandparents were not like that. And they weren't perfect, but they definitely had a much greater sense of responsibility and duty in their marriage. And it shows. The societies that they lived in were much better, much more flourishing, much more safe than ours are right now. Lost in translation, he says, we used to can our own food. Yeah. That's one good example. And canning your own food, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of wisdom and know-how. You can't just go in there and do whatever, or else you're going to end up with botulism. So yeah, that's just a microcosm of, you know, people used to care about being meticulous and care about quality, care about doing things right. And now, you know, a lot of that is just completely out the window. Um, you know, it's crazy. And not only, and oh, it's like I was saying about how our society is not as flourishing as our ancestors and our grandparents. um you know, even as far as we have like documented history, um we've seen that, you know, societies that are more civilized, that are more advanced, you know, they have good solid families, and in societies that are very regressive or barbaric and archaic, they don't have as strong family structures. And our society is regressing. You know, where, you know, everyone talks about, oh, it's 2023 or it's current year and something is still not right or this is still not done yet. And it's like, you know, it's 2023 and there's anarchy in the streets. You know, our society is regressing back to anarchy. And a really big part of that is because of the breakdown of the family, you know. And going back to that sermon that I listened to about daycare and about how, you know, people, they just drop their kids off without, you know, knowing who they're with and what they're doing. You know, another thing about marriage is that you have to properly vet your spouse. You know, you don't want to just jump into it, you know, marry a stranger. You don't want to not you don't want to make it harder than it's already going to be. You know, because marriage is going to be hard whether you're married to the perfect woman or the perfect man. You guys could have pretty much everything in common and get along on most things, and you know, you could have all that, but marriage is still going to have its challenges. It's still going to have its ups and downs. And so, what are you going to do then? But you don't need to put these unnecessary obstacles in your way to make your marriage even harder than, you know, it needs to be. You know, some really good ways to make your marriage divorce proof would be by making sure that you're marrying someone who has all the same values as you. Like earlier, I was looking up statistics about divorce, um, and one of them was saying that divorce is much lower among people who share religious values, or people who are just religious in general. And so, you know, to be married to an atheist, you know, that's a roll of the dice, because they don't feel like they're responsible to anyone higher than themselves, and they're going to do what they want to do. And you know, they're not answering to a higher power or answering to, you know, the creator they see. And so it's definitely risky. You know, marrying someone who, you know, shares your same values when it comes to money. You as a serious person, you know, if you're good with money, then you don't want to marry someone who's reckless and wild and, you know, spend everything they get. Um, you know, so yeah, marriage is hard. Um, and you want to count the cost of it. Like Jesus, he says to the disciples, you know, count the cost. And he tells a parable about a man who doesn't count the cost before he builds a house, and you know, people mock him because they see that the house is unfinished and they know that he didn't have the money to finish it. And so, you know, I'm not, as an advocate for marriage, I have in the past been accused of just saying that everyone should get married as soon as they turn 18, and that marriage is just like a cakewalk. And, you know, it's easy, you know, just figure it out. No matter what happens, just figure it out. And I am an advocate for just figure it out at the end of the day, you know, because where there is a will, there's a way. But of course, I realize that, you know, it's not just a walk in the park, and that, you know, there are a lot of difficulties that come in marriage, but you know, they are fixable. They are walk throughable. And so, gosh, my nose is so itchy. um, you know, you can overcome those. And so, yes, what was I about to say? About lost my train of thought. But Anyways, so oh, okay. Dr. Nakumbe, he says, do you recommend community counseling for atheists if they are having relationship problems like a marriage counselor? That's an interesting question. Well, that's a couple interesting questions, Dr. Nakumbe. Thank you. Um, Community counseling. So what would that look like? Um, like would that be like some type of thing that looks like an AA meeting or something that looks like a Lions Club meeting? Like they come together as couples and they just try to help each other? Or I've never heard of community counseling. Um, for marriage, like marriage counseling. I mean, they have secular marriage counselors. So, if you're an atheist and you want to, hold on to your marriage, then I feel like you could just go to a secular marriage counselor. And even, I feel like even most of the time, they probably are leaning on the secular or liberal side. Because I've heard of people getting marriage counseling and at the end of it, the people are like, "Oh, well, we're getting divorced," and the marriage counselor is one who helped us decide that we wanted to get divorced. So I don't know about that. Okay, he says a relationship coach or a marriage counselor that's not associated with the church. Oh, okay, so yeah, um, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Because if your spouse is an atheist but they still do want to make the marriage work, then yeah, I think that absolutely that you guys should do that. There's a Bible verse that I cannot think of the address of, but basically says that if the unbelieving spouse depart, let him depart. But if he wants to stay, then you should still hold on to that marriage. You don't divorce your spouse if you get saved or if you realize that you made a mistake by marrying an unsaved person and leave them. Then you stay and you try to be the best spouse that you can be and try to maintain your marriage and salvage it as best you can. But if they leave, then that's just the way it's going to be. You can't force them to stay. So thank you, Dr. Nakumbe. Um, yeah. Another thing is that the thumbnail that Black Man Unfiltered that he used is from a movie called An Indecent Proposal, which I've never seen fully. I've seen clips of it. But the plot of that movie is a couple. I think they're on a cruise, and there's a rich guy who makes a proposal to this man who says, I want to, spend a night with your wife and I'll give you, X amount of dollars for it. And so that is a literal representation, not something that happens every day of, someone actually asking you, for your marriage as a dollar amount, because, something like that, that would be the destruction of most marriages. So I don't know how that movie ends, if their marriage is dissolved or what have you. But yeah, more often than not, it's not going to be that, in your face. Because, maybe sometimes people go into it thinking that, oh, when things happen and when things arise, I'm going to be ready and I'm going to be able to, fight whatever comes. But you get blindsided by things and you don't realize that, these are little cracks that are appearing in your marriage that are going to be the downfall later on. Um, a great chain is broken by a single weak link. And so you start chipping away at, different pieces and before you know it, your marriage is dissolved. Because, how many people really think, going into it, oh, he does this and it bothers me, but I'm not gonna, it's not a big deal. And then years later, it just compounds and they don't talk about it or it doesn't get any better and they become bitter and they become resentful towards their spouse and the love is no longer there for them because they're so eaten up by the frustration and the animosity that they feel towards them. And so, and before they know it, they're in the divorce court. And it's like, how did I get here? And it's people not counting the cost of their vows, not counting the cost of their marriage. And I've also heard a quote that says that animosity breeds contempt. And so it's very common for, you to, as the individual, become resentful or, contemptuous towards someone that you see very often and that you're around a lot. And that quote reminds me of when I was watching an episode of Black Mirror, and there was about, I guess, some writer had gotten killed, and they thought that it was possibly some like, hater online who did it or something. And the woman who was reviewing the case, she said, no, this seemed personal. The like the spouse did it, and the spouse didn't do it. But she was saying, like, it seemed personal. Like the hate that someone will give to like a person online, that's not real. That's just like internet stuff. That's not like real life. In a marriage, the hate that can be formed is real. It's 3D. And so that reminds me of that quote, that animosity breeds contempt. And so, bitterness and envy, that's another thing that could go on the list of things that, people let destroy their marriage. They don't count the cost of that. They don't realize that bitterness that they're holding, it's tearing up their marriage. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it to, get rid of your marriage because, you're holding grudges. And even if you were initially upset about something that was valid, but if you guys are moving past that and you're trying to move forward, you gotta let that kind of stuff go. Dr. Nakumbe once again says, $1 million for one night on a boat. Oh, you've seen it. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've never seen it. I've just seen the clips of it. So I thought that was funny that he put that as a thumbnail. But yeah, bitterness. The Bible says a lot about bitterness and how it rots at you and it eats at you. And it doesn't do your spouse any damage. I mean, it will eventually do them damage when you leave them. But you don't want to be bitter, because I mean that eats at you and that destroys you. And so you gotta be bigger than that. You gotta move past that. And that's something that, is for definitely men and women. Um, I don't know what gender is more grudge holding, but it's something that has to be, checked and constantly reevaluated, because it's so easy to let little things like that just creep in and start to rot the foundation of the marriage and rot the foundation of um, your vows and what you deem to be valuable. um it's little stuff, like how we talked about with money. It's first off, it's, oh, I'm just going to work an extra hour every day after work. I'm going to just stay back an extra hour. And then it's, oh, I'm going to go pick up a couple extra hours on my days off. And then you're traveling for work and you're gone on the weekends, and then you're gone for a week at a time, and you're gone for months, and then you guys are just roommates. You're just, you're so focused on your career and you want to hustle, and you've deluded yourself into thinking that I'm doing this for us and I want to build this for us. And I'm doing this so that way we can retire and that we can save and we can buy a house or we can buy a boat, or I'm doing this for the betterment of my relationship. And then it becomes the downfall of your relationship. And so another thing like we talked about with is the freedom thing. People, they start to feel trapped in their marriage, and they start talking to other people. They start to confide in other people that are not their spouse. They have these work husbands or these work wives, and that is just a little crack in the foundation, and it grows and it grows. I just watched a video not long ago about a woman who I mean, she lost a lot of weight, and so that put her in the mindset of like, oh, I'm hot now, and she started cheating on her husband with one of her coworkers. And she said it started off so innocent, and I've heard that from other testimonies of people who cheat on their spouses with friends or even relatives of their spouse, and they're like, it started off so innocent, and we were just talking here and there whenever we saw each other. And then we were going out of our way to talk to each other, and then we exchanged numbers, and then we were going on lunch together, and then we were meeting up after work, and then and then we ended up in a hotel together. And it's sad that people are just are just so relaxed and just so careless about their marriage, and things that could be extremely detrimental to it. Like, driving is a very big responsibility. And so it should not be taken lightly. And just like marriage is a very big responsibility, and that should not be taken lightly. And so whenever you get behind the wheel of a car, you should be serious, you should be sober minded, you should be focused on the road, not distracted by whatever's going on your phone and whatever is happening on your car. You need to be focused on driving and being safe and getting to your destination and not hitting anybody and not hurting yourself. And when you're married, you need to be focused on your marriage, and that needs to be a really high priority on your list. Not just, yeah, I mean, I'm married, and that's just something that in the background of my life. I'm a businessman first, or I'm a businesswoman first. I'm an engineer, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a career boss first, and then I'm a spouse, and then I'm a parent. Your marriage should be in the forefront of things that are important to you. And the Bible says that where your heart is, there will your treasure. Yeah, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And so that verse is talking about, setting your sights on things above and setting your sight on things in heaven, and not, having your treasure here on earth. But one thing that you should treasure here on earth is your marriage. And Dr. Nakumbe, he also says, but what if you want more for your family? To put kids in after school activities, to be able to provide a little bit more than what regular families have, a house instead of a studio apartment, etc. Yeah, that sounds good and it sounds productive, but it's dangerous. When it comes to after school activities for kids, I think after school activities are overrated, personally speaking. I think that one of the best after school activities that kids should be doing is hanging out with their parents, doing stuff with their parents because they've already been at school for 8 hours, and the parents have probably been at work. Both of them probably have been at work for 8 hours as well. And so the parents are spending very little time with their kids nowadays. And so I think that that's something that, should be mitigated, just doing all this extra stuff and playing in sports or doing, clubs and, kids should be spending much more time with their parents, getting to know them, gleaning wisdom from them, talking to them. Parents should be doing a lot of in a perfect world, if I had it my way, people would be homeschooling their kids. And then maybe after homeschool, you could have some kind of extracurricular activities, but I know that's not what you mean. And then Dr. Nakumbe says, after school, and you need your wife to work or someone to bring in a bit more income. And then he also says, but they're old. But the parents are old or but the kids are older. I'm not sure which one you mean. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with maybe, I don't know, I guess it just depends on also talking about it with your spouse. If you and your spouse are communicating that, hey, this is temporary, I think that's a big part of it, is that realizing this is not going to be the new way of life, but this is just a temporary phase that we're going through, that, we are going to, we're going to work a few more hours. Oh, okay. Yeah. The parents are older. Okay. So yeah, this is going to be a temporary phase where we're going to be working more hours, to hustle and to pay off bills and to, get ahead. But it is going to come to a stop at a point, and we're going to come back together, and we're going to, go back to being the way that we used to be. Dr. Nakumbe also says, taking maybe a part-time gig and temporary, but those usually end up turning into something long-term and disaster, as you were talking about. Yeah. So exactly, understanding that, okay, for 6 months or maybe for a whole year, we're going to buckle down for this year and we're really going to get out of debt, or we're going to save and we're going to get a nice home, or we're going to get a better car, or we're going to, save up to, for a college fund, or, whatever it might be. That is understandable. But to make it a way of life, as so many do now, is that I'm just living a hustle culture kind of life. I am a entrepreneur. I am a career-oriented person around the clock all year long. And that is not sustainable for a marriage, whether that be the man or the woman, And of course, the man, it's not as hard for him to balance that because that's his natural role in life. He has been, kind of already trained in that mode, and his mind is better at dealing with that. So it's usually an issue with the woman where she's like, okay, I'm gonna hustle and I'm gonna be a boss babe and I'm gonna, get this money for us. And usually she doesn't even say the money is for us. She usually says the money is for me, which is another problem. But yeah, I think that, when it comes to wanting to get something that is I want to build and I want to save up for something like putting off the good for the great. That's fine. But definitely, it's something that needs to be watched because it can get out of hand really fast. When it comes to just staying back, and then the categories that I gave, like the money, the freedom, and the happiness, they're not exclusive to each other. They can overlap. And so you start making more money, and then because you're now making more money, now you start missing freedoms, or now you start getting used to freedoms that you now have that you didn't have before because the money has now bought you these X amount of freedoms that you can do. And then now because you have more freedom because of the money, now you become less happy in your marriage and now you want to leave. And so they can kind of coincide, they can intermingle with each other. So it's not like it's just one thing at a time. You got to be vigilant to safeguard your marriage from all these outside forces that are going to try to tear it down, and they will try to tear it down. And so yeah, especially with money. Money is such a big one. That's a big reason why people argue, why they fight, why a lot of marriages crumble. It's not number one anymore. I think it used to be number one at a time. The number one reason why people divorce is over money. But now it's over lack of commitment, which I feel like is kind of obvious. Like, I feel like that's not even like something to say. Like, it's like, okay, I mean, of course, no matter what the reason you're divorcing for, it's because of lack of commitment, whether it be for money or for infidelity or for anything. Like, it all comes back to lack of commitment. So I don't even know why that even is considered like the number one, because they all go back to it. But that's what the streets are saying. That's what the internet says. So yeah. And so I guess if we don't have anybody to come up and add to it, we're gonna be wrapping it up. But so another thing about it is that, like I was saying about, these work wives and the work husbands, it all starts off so innocent. And they look back and they're like, I don't know how it's happened. I don't know where the time went. I don't know what I got myself into. And it's like, you weren't being vigilant. You were not watching for your marriage. You were not safeguarding. The Bible says that the devil is as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And your marriage is something that is always going to be under attack from the devil, because your marriage is a picture of the relationship that Christ has with humans, and also a picture of the Godhead as itself, as a relationship that the Father has with the Son. And so the devil hates marriage. And so you think that it's all fun and games, you accepting gifts from your little work wife, you going on lunch with your work wife, and I'm gonna give my work husband my personal phone number, not my work number. But it's all good. He lives on the other side of town. I have no reason to go see him. He's gonna text me during the day. It's gonna be appropriate. Famous last words. Let me just say that. It all sounds so good. We all think that we're in control, but there's never been a crack addict laid in a ditch somewhere who thought that they were going to end up like that the first time they took a sip of alcohol or something. It's a slippery slope. It's all fun and games until you're sitting in your house by yourself and your kids are down the street because you got a divorce. So saying all that to say, y'all, is that count the cost of your marriage and be very vigilant and be very on guard and be very defensive when it comes to your marriage. Who's gonna look out for it if not you? It's you, and it really is you and your spouse against the world. There are so many forces, spiritual and earthly, that are actively trying to tear it down. And the devil is just constantly whispering in people's ears, like, oh, it's like when Jesus is in the wilderness and the devil tempts him, showing him all the kingdoms of the earth and say, just bow to me and I'll give you all of these. The devil is constantly in people's ear, like, just leave your husband, just leave your wife, and you'll be free. And usually a lot of women, they think like, oh, I've been married for a while, but I'm still hot, I still got it, and I'm gonna leave him, and I'm gonna go talk to Tyrone, who's in my messages, telling me how beautiful I am and how great I am, and I just got a promotion at my job, and now I'm making six figures on my own, and I'm good, and I don't need him. And the devil is just whispering that in your ear. He just putting those lies into you. Like, yeah, you don't need him. You don't need that. Your kids, they'll be fine, being raised in separate states, and it'll be all good. You just look out for you. Your happiness is what matters most. Friend, it's a lie. It's a lie from the pit of hell. Don't listen to it for a second. And so, yes, I'm going to encourage you to this week. Maybe I'm going to give you guys some homework. That this week, you try to evaluate some of your habits and some of the conversations that you're having, and the way that you're talking to your spouse, and think about, is this really conducive to the long term? Am I investing in my marriage, or am I depleting from it? Am I putting good stock into my marriage, and am I adding positive investments into my marriage, or am I taking away from it? And am I counting the cost of my marriage, and am I increasing its value, or is it depleting in value? So think about those things this week, and I'm gonna talk to you guys next Saturday. So once again, I thank you to Black Man Unfiltered for allowing me to come up on his platform and to speak my piece, and to get up here and enjoy talking to you guys, and reading your comments. And thank you once again for Dr. Nakumbe for leaving all those good questions and for leaving that super chat. And yes, so I am Miss Jenny. I'm glad I got to talk to you guys, and I'll see you next week at this time.